This is your host, Tim Palladino, reminding you to please like and subscribe. And if you really dig what we're doing, please leave a review wherever possible.
I was so sad for the longest time. Like the majority of my life, I was a sad dude. And until I really started checking myself after after the day where I attempted to kill myself, I decided I'm going to start living with purpose. Like whatever that looks like, I'm going to try and see if I can shift this and take power over this life I have.
Rob Sirstins is an empowerment life coach. He helps co-create the tools his clients need to heal and step fully into their power. Rob does this by using the warrior work method that includes dreaming, identifying of blocks, uncovering the true you, purpose work, and finished off with a personalized action plan. As you will be able to tell, Rob is full of passion for what he does, and he has the personal experience to really empathize with his clients. I know you'll love Rob as much as I do. Hope you enjoy the show. My name is Tim Palladino, and welcome to the Entrepreneur's Hierarchy of Needs podcast. Rob, my brother, thank you so much for being here and joining me for the next hour. I hope we rock some minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here, man.
Yeah. So listen, we're going to talk today about kind of like stepping into your power. We're going to talk about, adversity and stuff like that and things maybe that you've been through or the common thing that you work with people. When it comes to what you're working on, it's the Warrior Project, right? I'm just making sure I'm saying that correctly.
Warrior work,
rather. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Warrior Work, how it started, who you're helping. Cause I know we've had some conversations in the past that, we were just kind of touching on, for the audience. Yeah.
So Warrior Work, when you hear the word warrior, it's overused and, definitely oversaturated in these days. And it's definitely a word where it doesn't mean necessarily masculine. It doesn't mean, soldierly. It doesn't mean at the gym or any of those, tough guy or macho. What warrior means to me is truly identifying who you are, right? And taking the courageous journey to identify, peel away the stories, peel away the belief systems, peel away the trauma, and really, kind of cracking that egg and opening yourself up and being like, this is who I am, right? Yeah. And the work behind that, the work is simply, another common term we hear of like getting the work done, doing the work. It's the courageous step to heal, to really like shake off that identity of trauma that a lot of us, have on ourselves. Like, this is just the way I am, take it or leave it, all the things, on the toxic patterns of ourselves, and really like, I do want to step up, step in, become better. I want to heal myself of these wounds that I've been carrying for so long. And so that's what warrior work is. And, I work with, I don't work with just men. I have a large emphasis on men. I do men's retreats where we work with, the vulnerability pieces, the anger pieces, a lot of things where men struggle with feeling like they're alone and it's them against the world, because that's how we were brought up. Yeah. Be tough, don't cry, don't show weakness. And then I also, work a lot with women and, just helping them understand what a healthy, powerful masculine is and helping them through those stories and those patterns. And, my coaching is the same for both men and women. It's just depending on what they're wanting to step into with power. It seems like majority of my clients are entrepreneurs in some sort of or another. And then I do work with a lot of athletes as well, collegiate athletes, and, those trying to turn it into a pro form as well. So yeah, that's pretty much the basis of what I do.
Cool. Very cool. So you talked about masculinity. What are your thoughts on masculinity? I know we had a little bit of a conversation in the earlier days.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So masculinity, there's healthy and there's toxic, and you hear the word toxic masculinity thrown around all the time. One thing that I'm really, really trying to emphasize with, my, social media is a lot of men still feel like they need to throw around anger and intimidation in order to be manly.
Yeah.
And whether it's to women, whether it's to their children, they think that's manly, and it's actually not. I take great pride in knowing my daughter, who's 9 years old, and my stepchildren who age from, 16 down to 7, have never been afraid of me a day in their life. Like I'll even check in. I'm like, with my daughter Amari, I'm like, have you ever been afraid of me? And she laughs. And she's like, no, I'm afraid of mommy. Right. You know, and people look at me sometimes and, you know, I don't always have a smile on my face. It doesn't mean I'm angry. I just, you know, have, you know, a resting bitch face or whatever people call it. And so I come off intimidating, and then people get to know me. They're like, oh, you're just a giant teddy bear. And I actually am. Yeah. Right. And it's just, but it's changing the emphasis that like men need to throw around their weight in order to declare dominance or power. The power actually in the masculine is actually the softness, is in the tenderness, in the calmness, right? And not projecting the anger. Like there's places for anger. There's places for, you know, to work that stuff out. That's why I love the gym so much, right? The gym's always been a big part. And then football and rugby field, big part of my life. You know, I've never been a fighter or a violent person outside of that. But what I'm trying to help men understand is, number one, it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to show emotions, but also identifying, is your anger toxic or not? And one way to quantify your anger is just like, when you're in anger, are you doing damage to yourself or are you doing damage or harm to others? Right. Yeah. And it doesn't just need to be physical. It can be verbal abuse. It can be punching a wall and intimidating someone. It can be screaming and standing over someone. And so it's hard for a lot of men to conceptualize at first, because that's the way they grew up. That's the way they saw their dad and their brothers operate and so on. It's been generational. And now I'm at a place where I really want to help men break this pattern of anger and the fear, because it's not serving. It doesn't. And, you know, once you really dive into the anger, there's a lot of sadness underneath the anger. There's a lot of fear underneath the anger, right? Even though it seems powerful and dominant and whatever you want to see on the movies, in reality, there's a lot of pain there. And so that's what I'm trying to get men to get in touch with.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the adage of hurt people. Right. You know, and because, you know, kind of, you know, recovering from that situation, I had a lot of pain growing up. I had a lot of anger. Who knows of the exact source or sources, probably, right? There's probably a myriad of reasons that I had that. And I guess the big reason would be that I didn't know how to kind of cope or digest any pain, disappointment, or anger. Right. But yeah, it's sad too, because once I got over it, I realized I was kinder to myself afterwards. Sure. Because I was like, oh, I'm not this person. I'm not this person who screams or loses their edge. And what's even more sad is if you have been going through this for years, it becomes a personality trait. It kind of becomes you make it who you are. Right.
100%. Yeah. I used to identify myself as a very angry person.
Same.
Right. Like people would come over to me at the gym, like, wow, you work out so hard. Like, what motivates you? And I'm just like, no, I'm just really angry. Yeah. And it would like put people on their heels, like, oh, okay. Right. But it's the only way I knew, because I never got into alcohol. I never got into drugs. That wasn't my thing. But the best and safest way I could channel that anger is through the gym. The only problem is I would wake up to those same demons again the following day. Yeah. Right. I wasn't healing anything. I was just putting Band-Aids on it. Right. And so it's just diving a little bit deeper. It's just like, we don't want to cope with it. We don't want to put Band-Aids on it. How do we actually heal from it? What needs to be done? What are those steps? Right. And so that's where, you know, a lot of the work comes in.
Yeah. One of our earlier conversations was actually about when I used to go to the gym and I would work out out of pure rage. And the lesson of our conversation was, I have to honor myself. I can't just go until I'm broken. Like that was such routine. And like in my head, it was twisted up. Like that's what I deserve, or that's what I need to do. And
the self-punishment.
Yeah. And it was really weird. And it was one of those things that, like, you know, a lot of us, men and women, we don't realize that there's another way until something is spoken aloud or brought to our attention, either I'm going to use the word calling us out, or you know, recognizing something. And some people go years and years and years without addressing it.
Right.
And it needs to be handled. If you're noticing something, you know, that like at the core, we know like when something's painful or not.
Right.
I think one of the reasons that we don't act upon it is because we think we're alone in it. Like no one's ever felt this way. Or shame. Right. Which I was on the shame side.
For sure. Yeah. And another big intricate piece that comes in. It equates down to self-love, right?
Right.
And feeling like I need to punish myself. And we
Mhm.
have this story, especially in this culture that we are in the States, is like everything needs to be hard, and we grow up with
Yes.
like things with sports, and it's pain and suffering is the only way to gain success, and that's true to a point. But we don't always need to suffer, and we don't always not everything needs to be hard. And once we can get to a place that actually, like, how can I check in with my body? Like, what does my body need?
Yeah.
Right. What feels good to me? How can I actually honor it? That's a whole nother level of self-love, rather than just getting in the gym or doing whatever we're doing, running, working, whatever that thing is we do, and just trudging along the way until we can't go anymore. And then we wonder why we feel so broken and so overtired all the time. It's because we're not honoring and checking in truly with our heart, that heart coherence.
Yeah, and that was actually the true birth of the entrepreneurial hierarchy of needs, and it was about harmony. Because I did the same thing I did at the gym that I did with entrepreneurship. I needed to be a millionaire. I needed to work 7 days a week. Like there was like this invisible scorecard that no one else cared about but me, but I thought everybody else cared about. So I was trying to meet this wild ass standard that I imagined. And that's where all this comes into play, where it's about harmony. Yeah, work your ass off. Of course, work your ass off.
Right.
Unless something else is suffering. It's all about harmony and motion and making sure that the right things are in perspective at the right time.
Right. 100%. And like identifying what the priorities are in your life. Right. And identifying like what is the motivation and the reason behind that goal that you've set for yourself, and like I said, I have a lot of very successful entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I always work on them with is, they're going a million miles an hour, 80-hour, 90-hour weeks. And I always ask why, like, what's the end goal? And a lot of them always return to, well, I just want more. I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, that sounds great, but what does that even mean? And most of them can't ever quantify what that means.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And then we'll go dive a little bit deeper. It's like, okay, so what are you actually sacrificing all this other things in your life for? Your marriage is suffering. You're not getting any quality time with your children. When you're on vacation, you're not even present. Right. So actually, what does more mean? Just so you can open up your bank statement and be like, that feels good for that moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's finding that balance and finding that priority to really identify what we're honing into. And usually there's always trauma pushing that more card. It's the trauma and the ego. Right. And then they wonder why they're so unsatisfied and like so lost, because it's just more.
Yeah.
It's a black hole.
Yeah. It brings up two very good points with ego, right? Like I believe a lot of people say ego is the enemy. Like that seems to be the term going around. I think ego is a pet. Right. I think it's something that you can deploy or hold back as you need it. Because sometimes I need my ego to get through the day, right? To kind of like power me a little bit forward, to have that healthy disregard for reality, but sometimes totally unnecessary. Unnecessary. And the other point that you brought up was language.
Right.
More like what, like if you can, I'm trying to think of what the there was a conversation that we had at one of our get-togethers. And it was just how there's a lack-based language and an abundance style language.
Sure.
And I don't need, but I desire.
Right.
It sounds like semantics, but the reality is like you desire is like this propulsion, this language of propulsion.
Right.
Like when I desire something, it's like, oh man, I'm like salivate. I can't wait to have it. Like there's nothing I need is like, I'm scared. I hope I get it. Like, and that even if that may not be the case for everyone, but language association with certain words are super powerful. So what are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like needing and wanting is out of lack and out of fear. Right. And it's just like, that's where the stories come in. I feel like desire is the motivation of the soul. Right. It's something that you're already predestined to have. Just got to take the right steps and the right trust to get there. Right. And it's something that's like not going to be stopped or dwindled away because that's your true desire in your heart. Right. You're going to keep going for it. Needs and wants are different and they change every day. You wake up with different emotions. That need and want may change. That desire never goes away.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. So what are some common stories that maybe some of your clients have had that we can maybe talk about for a second to let people that are listening or watching at some point can relate with and see, hey, maybe I'm not the only one. What are some
Yeah.
common?
So yeah, I think the number one thing when it comes down to maybe I'm not the only one is identifying. There's a lot of people like just on the brink of the edge right now of questioning whether they want to be on this earth any longer. And that was me 4 years ago. And I had the stories that I was all alone, that no one understood me, right? And I wasn't asking for help and everything. And so I take on a lot of clients that are at a place where it's just like, I don't know if I want to be here any longer. And, I have suicidal ideations, all the things. And again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. This is my work that I've created, my methodology for myself. But the number one question I always ask them, and I always, up till now, get the same response. And that question is it that you don't want to be here? Or is it that you just don't want to feel how you're feeling? And every time they will say, I just don't want to feel how I'm feeling. And so that's the work that we start to jump into. Okay, how are you feeling? Why are you feeling this way? What are you doing each day that compounds this pain and this hopelessness in your life? And a lot of it, I would say the majority of it does come from childhood, right? There's a lot of things, being abandoned, being abused, being, very sexually abused and all the different things, right? Or maybe it's just at a time in their place where it's just like in their life, I'm not contributing to this earth. I'm not doing anything. I go to work, hit my punch card, and then I leave, collect a check. And it's just the same thing every single day.
Yeah.
Right. And the number one thing I want people to understand is you're not alone. A majority of people question life, some at a deeper level than others. But the difference is those people willing to take the step to ask for help and to go out and get the help they need and to go forward with it, right? Because the stories will tell you no one will understand me. I'm alone on this. Like, because I literally grew up very, very alone, with, being a person of color in a very white dominant area, a very religious background area that taught, things about people of color that aren't true, that were very discriminatory. And so it's just, I grew up with that deep into my 30s. Like, I'm alone, no one understands me.
Yeah.
Right. Until I decided to be like, okay, what if I didn't feel like this? How would I want to feel? And that was the most important question I asked myself. Because what I found through my self-work is I kept manifesting everything I did not want in this life. Everything I didn't want. My deepest fears came true. And it was for the fact that I was concentrating all my energy on everything I did not want. And so when I intake a new client, I always ask them, like, what do you desire? Exactly those words that we talked about earlier. What do you desire? And a lot of them will always go to, well, I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, that's the reason you are where you are, because you're focused on everything you do not want. And that's why it continues to manifest. And so I try and help them reframe. Well, that's what actually we do, reframe. I need you to focus specifically on what you truly do desire. Well, I want to be happy. Okay, great. What does happiness mean to you? My happiness and your happiness are completely different.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where we start to get very, very specific and dissect everything that they want to call in desire. Once we can start doing that, that's when we create the game plan and we start moving forward with the work. But yeah, that's where I feel like most people feel they're alone, is with questioning if they want to be here any longer. And if they can just switch that and reframe that and get to a place of understanding they just don't want to feel the way they feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but if you are feeling that way, it is your responsibility to ask for help, because it's an invisible thing. When I was in my darkest, I was great at making people laugh, being the clown, hiding it all.
Right.
And no one ever even knew about any of my mental
Right.
health issues, going
Right.
through like severe depression and stuff like that, because I always seemed happy. I had a personality shift that I can turn on
Right.
and not feel that pain, right, of admitting it
100%.
and stuff like that. So it's our responsibility. I know if I didn't ask for help, then I wouldn't have gotten it, and I wouldn't be in the thank God the mental state I am in today. And
Right.
yeah, and the I like the idea of reframing.
Right.
That's super important. There's something I'm sure you're very well familiar with, called the reticular activating system.
Mm-hmm.
It's in our brain, and like the common explanation is like, if you buy a Jeep, you suddenly see all these Jeeps.
Right.
Well, if you don't want to feel like shit, you're gonna look and measure against feeling like shit. And
Right.
you're going to keep on seeing how you feel like shit in life, and then it's going to become helpless, then gets you to a state of hopeless, and then you're cuffed to this emotion, which is only a
Right.
thought
Right.
in most cases.
100%. And then a lot of people take that on as their identity, and
100%. So I
and
was
then
going to go
they
into
buy
that.
into it every day.
Yeah,
Right.
I
This is my
believed a
life.
lot of the bullshit I told myself about
Right.
me.
I believed it all.
Yeah, yeah, it was because I'm a great salesman to
Right.
myself. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
That's super unfortunate, but it's a reality. It's
For
definitely a
sure.
reality. Do you have any retreats or anything going on? I know we're coming out of the scary time of the vid.
No, I haven't said anything yet. I'm probably looking for August or September
Okay, good.
to do some more men's work. I've
Yep.
even thought about putting something together for like a women's retreat, and so
Great.
they can really dive in to what healthy masculine looks like, because a lot of women grow up not knowing what healthy masculine looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And and this goes for everybody. We grow up in an abusive household, sexual, verbal, physical, whatever it looks like, and a lot of our brains are trained to think that is love.
Yeah.
That is love. Right. And so they go in and everyone gets in these toxic relationships, and they're thinking, well, my parents operated like this, therefore that's what it is. Right.
Yeah.
And so also helping, all parties reframe and like actually what love is, what safety is, what protection is, and what healthiness is within a relationship. Super important.
That's amazing too, because it's you it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. Like, you don't know another way until you've experienced. I'm sorry, you don't know what is right until you've experienced another way.
Right.
Like like right now, we're negotiating a deal for something, and the three of us are talking about like, hey, is this a good deal? And then the only answer is, compared to what?
Right.
Like, yeah, like that's the only way to find the right answer.
Right. If you don't have a reference point, it's kind of tough.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and yeah, then just the patience with self to kind of fail forward in a sense.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or understandings you can share with us about how to kind of like navigate our thoughts and get to the other side of them?
Yeah, I mean, when I look back at where I was, 4 or 5 years ago, the toxicity and the muck and the disgustingness and the darkness in my brain, like, there's kind of, my ego shows up with a little bit of an embarrassment, right? And because I believed in all the bullshit I told myself every day. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not white enough. Like, whatever the story was, and I'd buy into it. And I walked around with my head down everywhere I went, and I was just sad. I was so sad for the longest time. Like, the majority of my life, I was a sad dude. And until I really, really started checking myself after after the day where I attempted to kill myself, I decided, I'm like, I'm going to start living with purpose. Like, whatever that looks like, I'm going to try and see if I can shift this and take power over this life I have, rather than just living in this matrix that I felt I was living in for so long. And so for me, what I share with my clients and what I still have to do and activate like a new muscle all the time is really not only paying attention and being the observer, which you hear in the work talk a lot, but identifying what is your truth in the stories. when a client comes to me and they tell me they're not worthy, or they tell me, you know, my mom always said I was a slut, so I'm a slut. And like, this is the most wholesome woman ever. Like, just as an example. And the truth is, I'm like, I want you to ask yourself, is that your voice or your mom's voice?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, that's my mom's voice. I'm like, okay, so is that your truth or is that her truth? And she's like, no, it's definitely not my truth. Absolutely. And so I got to a place where these thoughts would come in my brain, and when they usually come when you're alone, you know, these bad thoughts, whether you're driving, whatever it is, and I would say out loud, that is not my truth. And then I'd be like, Rob, what is your truth? And then I'd replace it with either the antithesis or something that just feels better. Right. But I wouldn't lie to myself. Like, Rob, you're fucking amazing. I wouldn't say something like that. I'd be like, Rob, you're doing better than you were 2 weeks ago. Keep going. Something like that. Because if you go all the way to the other end, your subconscious brain isn't always going to believe it. But if it can be just a little soft, right? And being like, okay, what is my truth? I know my truth is I am worthy. I am worthy. Okay, why am I worthy? And you just start asking these questions and start having this dialogue with yourself. That's how you can start to change the mindset of what's going on in the conscious and subconscious brain, right? But you have to take it upon yourself to have those conversations rather than just like let it go through like the assembly line, and then it just goes in the backpack, and yeah, it's bullshit, toxic stuff, I believe. And you have to start challenging yourself on your belief system.
Yeah, I totally agree with, you know, taking it, I guess, one step at a time, or one step removed from how you think you feel. Right. If you go too far, it can create like this weird false ego that can be shattered really quick and be super detrimental when.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point.
When the curtain's removed.
Right.
Yeah, that's super important. And just having that willingness and to remind yourself that you're worthy.
Right.
Worthiness is one of the weirdest words that I've ever struggled with in my life. Like, I thought, like, for who? And like all these things, because, like, you know, I think it may have been you that I started having these conversations with a while ago. And it was like, well, why do I have to be worthy? And it was clearly, it became a reminder of, I'm worthy for anything I would like to obtain. Right. Like I'm more than my thoughts. Like it wasn't like this big grandiose thing. It was just the simple fact, like, oh no, I make mistakes. Forgive. Oh, I win, you know, celebrate it. You know? Yeah. Cause that was another thing. I'm
definitely a firm believer that we are born into this world 1000% worthy of everything, but it's everything that occurs around us. That's what we start believing in, because we're never taught how to build that resistance and that strength to know what is true and what is false. And so we just take in the data, whether it's from parents, whether it's from family, whether it's from kids, and we believe everything we're told. And then we get to a place where we're like, well, I'm not worthy because all this data shows me otherwise. Right. When in reality, it's just like, we are worthy. It's just knowing that we know that what the truth is.
Yeah, no, that brings up a really good point of who raises who now. I hate to sound like an old man shaking his fist on his front yard, but like these days, like we're even if you're like a great parent and a helicopter parent, your child is influenced all over the place. They just suck in information, man. They hear everything. And yeah, you have to be really, really, really careful. And, you know, this work can start young. Right. You don't have to wait. Like, you know, if someone's listening to this and they have kids, like, do it with them. Right. Just work with them. You don't have to do it yourself and then hope they figure it out later. Yeah. This could be a fun thing.
Yeah. Being my partner, I mean, we have 5 kids between us, and we're having these conversations with them all the time. Yep. All the time. Right. They don't, you know, we've lived our life of trauma. So hopefully we hope they don't go through what we went through, but chances are they are going to experience trauma and different trauma, but we can do a better job at preparing them and helping them be more conscious at a young age. Yeah. You know, so by the time they're our age, they're going to be much more advanced than we were. Sure. Right. That's the hope.
Yep. And I think it's absolutely possible. Because I don't necessarily think there's a value in removing, nerfing your life.
Right.
Like everything is soft and fuzzy. Like I think that's kind of it could be detrimental.
No, I agree. I mean, I think Jordan Peterson said something a couple months ago or whenever he put this discourse out, and I don't agree with everything he says, but one thing he said that I really loved is like, stop trying to protect your children, like from the world.
Yeah.
You're not serving them from protecting your children from the world. Cause you have these kids. I grew up in a very Mormon dominant, culture. And, most these parents would only let their kids play with other Mormon kids.
Yeah.
That's it. If they weren't LDS, they weren't allowed to play with them. Right. And I always thought that was super weird, even growing up in that church at that time. It's just like they're trying to protect them from all these things. And it's just, in reality, they're going to get to an age where they're just going to be exploded in the face of what this world really is.
Yeah.
Like, allow them to see the world, protect their innocence to a point, but also allow them to be a part of this world. And it's beautiful and it's very ugly.
Yeah.
So they get to choose how they, proceed through it.
What's the term? I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Yeah.
That always reminds me of. And
yeah.
And it's a combination of things, a bunch of ingredients: self-worth, determination, pride, a bunch of things, adversity.
Right.
It's not a simple thing.
Right.
It can't be set and programmed. Awesome stuff, dude. Any last notes before I let you go?
No, I have my autobiography coming out in September, October area. It's called Ego of the Warrior. And so it talks about everything that I've gone through and my healing process through it. And at first it just started off as a project of just like being something very healing and cathartic for me to write. And then it turned into a book. And it's funny that you asked the question that you did, because I solely wrote this book once I realized it was a book, just to help people realize that you're not alone.
Yeah.
That you're not alone.
Yeah.
Right? And people have been through it. And I'm not one to compare traumas. Like, there's people I know that have been in worse hell than I've been through, but it's simply stating, this is my hell that I've been through. And I am better for it because I chose the path to become better from it. Right. And so, super excited to share that with the world. So that's coming out.
I'm really excited. Make sure you, I'm sure I'm not going to miss the release, but we'll go ahead and share it with the audience when that comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
Rob,
for sure.
You're an all-star, dude. You're an all-star, and I miss you. I haven't seen you too long.
Miss you too, man. I need to get back down there.
Yeah. I've been kicking around getting to Denver too. I'm seeing some cheap flights, so
yeah. It's the cheapest flight. It's like $40.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, brother. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks so much, my man. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you.
Thank you again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing with the entrepreneurial hierarchy of needs and want to show your support, the best way to show some love is to subscribe and leave us an honest review. We also have a Facebook group where we continue these types of conversations and so much more for all of our continued growth. I can't wait to see you in there.